Just a long lost look in your eyes brings out a love that I can't disguise. So take me down to the places I've never seen. Or don't you try to kill me with kind. It's just your love that's driving me wild. Oh, from the dawn we rise, with the heart we cry, to the light we go, into the light we go. From the darkest night, from the fire inside, into the light we go, into the light we go, to the light we go.
If you're joining us late, I feel sorry for you. You missed one of the cleanest games we've had, especially coming from SKT. They looked fantastic. FLICKR got off to a great start. His Azir looked super good. And just as a team overall, the draft was nice. They played it out correctly. And KSV can't really say the same about them.
FLICKR with some superhuman engage as well that will remind fans of why he is so revered. It just really felt like an SKT game in a way that SKT's performances in 2018, even when they were winning, haven't really felt like they harkened back to 2017, 2016, 2015, and previous SKT. Blank had the most noticeable jump in play, and FLICKR also had his killer instinct on. Look at this scoop here.
So good.
Biggest scoop of ice cream to his teammates there, and from there, it never looked like SKT could lose, and we would also have our issues with the draft on the side of KSV. I think the Karma Ezreal negative synergy counted against them when they weren't able to win the early game. Seemed inevitable that SKT would take the win, and they seemed pretty flawless doing it as well. So game one, a big check mark for SKT.
Looking good, looking like the SKT of old. The question is, you see a lot of these replays, and it's either Blank or FLICKR engaging, and I said it before, the two of them were just all over KSV this game. Do you let Blank get Zac again? He looked so good on that pick. Previously 0-2 before, so it makes sense why they didn't ban it for this game, but maybe after game one, you might have to rethink that and take the pick away.
A lot of interesting things in this game, a lot of head scratchers. The Xayah, when there was no Rakan available, turned out to be a really nice pick because of its synergy with the Ardent Center and Janna being able to push it onto multiple members in the team. The Poppy did the job that he needed to, actually ended up out-damaging the Camille, which is amusing to see, but it's going to be those buckler trades whenever the passive was up. In general, I think SKT outpicked KSV very hard, and KSV had that narrow win condition they couldn't hit in the early game. So it all stacks together to be big smiles for the side of SKT. Let's see if game two can change things. But first, the MVP, it's going to be Blank.
Very well deserved. It was either going to be Blank or FLICKR, and I think the performance tonight from Blank was really great. We don't know if the guy on solo kill, the top 4 guy, is Blank or not, but certainly tonight he looked like he was on that level. 91% kill participation. Almost every single kill as he picks up his first MVP of the split.
You say that with surprise, but it should be no surprise to people watching. Blank has not had a good split, but he did have a good game one. Where he went, good things happen, and that hasn't been the case in the previous games he's played. So congratulations to Blank. Good to see from him. We'll see if he can make it happen, as you say, on other champions, because if it's Zac only, that's going to be found out very quickly.
So we have a little bit of a delay here. Looks like perhaps someone was changed out on the opposite side. Everybody in the SKT booth is the same, but over here it looks like Ambition, after his relatively weak start in game one, will be handed over to Haru in the jungle.
Now, usually that would mean something about an aggressive jungler coming in, but Haru hasn't really represented that in the 2018 season. So maybe he wants to rewrite his history like Blank has largely been doing in the first game. Want to see him hold Blank accountable some battle warding would go a long way for KSV because you know what you're getting with Ambition, and SKT seem to be very aware of that and were able to make him just a complete non-factor in game number 1.
Well, we'll see if Haru, we've talked about this a lot, where the sub-junglers in the back room studying the enemy jungler, seeing his pathing, deciding how he's going to counter him in the future games, and Haru definitely a guy who has that ability. We'll see if he can bring it out here against Blank. FLICKR looking confident, looking really good actually, whereas Crown doing a little bit of meditation before this game, definitely granted. But either way, guys, we're going to jump into pick and ban for game 2 right now. Here we go once again. No Vel'Koz is going to be the first ban out of SKT. That's the second time they've done it.
And they might first pick a mid laner as well. The Azir, a very possible first pick for SK Telecom T1. Given that knowledge, we'll see how KSV wants to interact. They'll just ban out the Azir, pushing up Talia priority for both teams, you'd imagine.
I think after you see FLICKR basically playing the cleanest Azir I've seen so far out of him, you got to go ahead and ban that one. Makes sense to ban out the Azir, who's just really high level in terms of tier, especially over the Zac, so they're going to ban that one away. The Varus also getting taken away here.
Yeah, I was going to mention, a Varus ban was pretty necessary for SKT. I think they're loading up to pick the best available jungler or pick a mid laner. They don't want to give away the Varus because Varus Karma, that's a comp you can feel good about. A champion who's able to actually threaten the front line. That was something not available to KSV, and the negative synergy between the Karma and the Ezreal counted against them, so they ban away the Varus. They're actually going to reach for the Xayah again. We'll see how KSV interact because it's not going to be a ban phase before SKT get to pick next. Do they try to pick away the Rakan or give the entire Xayah Rakan over to Bang & Effort?
I think you do here. We'll see what they want to pick for KSV. First off, though, the Tristana left available. Ruler cracking his neck a little bit. He's like, okay, let's go. I got to carry now. No more Ezreal. Gonna go on to this Tristana. Has pretty good KDA so far. Very high damage per minute as well.
SKT lost to the Tristana Rakan lane that BBQ were running a couple of times against them, but it's going to take Tristana into the Xayah for a threat rather than necessarily worrying about the support pick. So it seems like Effort is likely to be jumping onto the Rakan. Will be locked in now. Probably want to first round a mid laner or a jungler here if you're SKT.
It's going to be interesting to see Effort go from a super passive support into something that needs to be the engager, you know. Needs to get into that back line and get in there, you know. Effort overall doesn't strike me as the most confident player or guy in general, but will have the help of Blank again on the Zac, as I mentioned before. If they do lock this in, as they do, just going to be more comfort for Blank on that pick, who looked really good in game 1.
Look at this. KSV loading up with some engage, and not from a Camille this time. They block in the Alistar. So it's going to be Tristana Alistar looking for the aggressive level 2 trades. And just the fact that aggression can sometimes lead to a lot of reward against Xayah Rakan pre-6. Sejuani for Haru does show you that Haru is no longer this Rengar-only super aggressive jungler. He has been trying to conform to the meta, but there's still a play style around your lanes with Sejuani where you can choose to play aggressive rather than Ambition's pure passivity that we saw in game number 1.
Well, this time Kive not going to get his hands on the Camille. Looked mediocre in game 1. Tal did a good job of just staying on top of him, not allowing him to TP to fights or have any effect in the game after they got behind. Also going to ban out the Trundle here. We've said this about Tal many times. His name means I'm going to play Trundle, basically. Very famous Trundle player, and they take away that split pusher for Tal.
And if you see a Trundle ban, it suggests that Ruler will be locking in Q-Base champion first, and then the counter pick in the mid lane for Crown, just to allow a safe tank like Orin, for example, to be locked in and not worried about. It's your first thought when you see the Trundle ban. How about a flex pick, though, as the Sion is available in the second round? With very low Sion priority in this series so far. Went unpicked and unbanned in game number 1 for the first time in a long while. Does seem to suit Crown if he wants to go utility again, just be the tank in the mid lane, wave clearing. And they have Justana hyper carry this time around the Sion, but it is a true flex pick.
Interesting to see this as well. Tal might just be going on another tank in the top lane. Will be the Cho'Gath. Certainly can deal with the Sion if the Sion ends up going into the top lane.
One of the better picks into Sion top, like you're mentioning. Yeah. See what FLICKR wants to play. Gonna have to play a champion that can lane into the Sion, which is most things. And how about some scaling, says FLICKR. Considers the Corki. This has been a big pick for Kura recently. We're seeing more Anivia around the world. Can actually interrupt the Sion ultimate. And it's a smart pick because the Crystallize does act in a really good way against the Sion ultimate if you're in the right position. FLICKR comes back on the Anivia. The last time FLICKR was playing Anivia was, I believe, 2016 spring when it was seen as a counter pick to the Vladimir. FLICKR said it was a counter pick. Other people couldn't recreate it, but FLICKR's Anivia was super clean. Seems like KSV are considering flexing that Sion. We're going to see Syndra mid lane. Crown jumping on a pick that worked a lot for him in 2017 to try to attack the Anivia in lane.
Well, I play a lot of Telia, but I also played a lot of Anivia, so certainly caster bias coming in when it comes to the pick, at least this time around. Anivia, just so much play all around the world, and finally we get to see FLICKR picking it up. Certainly going to be a treat for all you guys watching out there. You tuned in at the right time to watch FLICKR's Anivia, so you should be happy about that.
A lot of zone control. They have the Rupture, the Wall, and also Zack's Engage on the side of SKT, not even mentioning Rakan's ability to get around a battlefield, whereas KSV have a pick comp going. They have very strong CC in every lane to gank around, and they want to turn into a siege comp with Justana and Sejuani and Sion in the late game. But hitting that after SKT controlled early to mid so well in game one is going to require a big adjustment, and I think largely around the jungle. We need to see Haru plus one of the solo lanes really turn it on and get some jungle control onto Blank. Zack is much more passive in his early jungling because he uses his gap close in order to clear his camps, therefore can be invaded on a lot more reliably. Let's see if KSV can actually do that, because that is not their innate playstyle with Ambition.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You mentioned, jungle and mid. Certainly Anivia Zack is a really fun combination to pull off. You can just revisit the mid lane if Crown has his summoners down, and it's the easiest gank in the world. See if they can actually make it happen here, as we're getting a look at all these compositions, and we're just about ready to jump into game number 2. SKT looks so clean in game number 1. They blew my mind with that game. Certainly not what I was expecting. Let's see if they can continue with the cleanliness, or if KSV can come back in this one.
미니언 생성까지 30초 남았습니다.
The studio is packed, as you always expect for a series of this caliber. It's going to be another fun one here, jumping into game number 2. We've seen mixed success from the Syndras, but more comfort here for Crown. We'll see if he can have a better game than game number 1.
Was set up with the counter pick and ended up fetching the Sion to top side into the sort of matchup where tank actually does very well into the Sion. The Cho'Gath, one of the best choices. See how Crown can do in this game, and I think you're on the ball when it comes to Crown's Flash. If you create a way to blow Flash in the early game, the repeat gank is going to be lethal again and again until Flash is open. Wait and see if Crown can be judicious. When he was on the Syndra in the past in 2017 spring, he was great at always holding on to his summoners, that famous thing we've always complimented FLICKR about. Need to be on point about that in this game as well.
The last thing you want to be as a Syndra is passive. You want to be pushing the lane, creating pressure in the mid lane, and especially against the Nivea pre-6 before she gets her ultimate. So we'll see if Blank can play around that and try to set up some ganks. Already that early ward spots Crown going for his own deep ward. So SKT gaining a little bit of information from that. Also interesting, Crown decides to go for heal. Will certainly help out against the Zack in terms of getting that speed boost, but not against the stun of the Anivia.
Usually, you look at the enemy team and you say, there's not a lot to cleanse on this side. Rakan, cleanse value is always a bit mixed. He does have Unsealed Spellbook, so in the early game, it's largely about sidestepping, so I have no problems with the heal. What I want to talk about is the level 1 strategy that happened in this particular game. It was a blue buff start, or top jungle start for the Zac to allow just the Xayah Rakan to enter lane first after Ruler and CoreJJ gave a leash to Haru. So that means they got to lane, they wanted to get the level 2 advantage. Stop there being a level 2 advantage to CoreJJ and Ruler is bot lane.
Oh boy, Effort just getting a little bit too deep there. The Ignite is popped, and at least he gets out of that one. 2 games in a row that's happened, though, as Effort went down at level 1. Very, very low in game number 1, but they went to get the early experience because that's what Tristana and the Alistar can do at level 2. They have a great all-in at level 2, so that's why they got the extra experience, and I guess you could say it ended up being pretty valuable. Brown's runes on the screen. Pretty standard stuff when it comes to the Inspiration first, Sorcery second. Nothing really to ruminate on there, but definitely SKT setting up their bot lane to succeed. And KSV getting to lane second means that the Tristana and Alistar will probably be pushed in for the majority of this laning phase. It's interesting to see so many new champions in the mid lane after 8.4. It was getting a little bit stale. You know, we saw Sion go in there, but lots of picks like Anivia, like Ziggs, just wave clearing kind of more risky picks normally, but with the tier and the Archangel's staff, that's really what makes these champions so strong. And I remember you telling me about this when 8.4 was first announced, those changes. You're like, well, look towards this, because certainly we'll see more of these types of champions coming in, and, well, we have, Papa. I mean, the power level of tier was a massive increase. It now has, what, 1,300 flat mana when you fully stack it up. It's an insane amount of mana, so the indirect buffs whenever you change an item that's core to some champions but a luxury on others results in scenarios like this, where now you have an item that gives 20% CDR, so already tier champions are getting CDR they didn't have before. It builds better than the alternative items. No one wants to build a Ludens because they're stuck in lane till they have 1,100 gold. Juve gonna take a trade here, but Blank's top side. This could happen. The flash coming in, trying to get the slow. The elastic slingshot and the moves. He's got his Nikes on tonight. Juve gets away from that gank.
Nice dance moves, but flashes are exchanged between the top laners. Again, in every way, Archangels overshadows other options. And on this patch, it's still 20% of your mana turned into a shield. So it also gives you that temporary tankiness that has been lost in a lot of item builds. So in every way, it gives you a lot than it did, more than it did before, and that's why Anivia comes back as a result.
Yeah. Anivia, Ziggs another one. No AP Kog'Maw just yet. Still waiting on that pick. Maybe someday. Tal's getting low here. He should be fine, but a couple more autos might do it. And there it is, first blood. Definitely not fine. The solo kill on the top lane. Gonna have to see how that one started.
Yeah, we definitely need a replay to understand how Tal just straight up died. In the laning phase, both flashes were down. We saw the exchange. That was strange, and Tal was able to hold Juve accountable in game 1. In a very different matchup. Now we're both on tanks, so watch the replay. Tal had no mana and was greeding to push the last minions forward, and then just straight up gets chased down. There's no other way to put it. Glacial Augment Scion is not the Arcane Comet Scion. Didn't show enough respect. Juve walks up. A lot of points into the queue. Another slow, and just too easy. Embarrassing from the side of Tal. That's what happens when you greed. Happens more often in the bot lane when people overstay and end up getting ganked. This time, getting greedy for CS, turned around against Tal.
Yeah, talk a lot about just calculations in the top side between the trades and stuff like that. And I was looking at the mana of Sion. He just barely was able to get that last Q off. And maybe Tal was saying, I can greed out like this because he's not going to have enough mana to walk me down the lane and eventually kill me. But fortunately, he was wrong. So something you don't see too often. Eventually it does happen in the top side, and Juve should be happy about that.
Getting that 11 CS lead and the extra goal, the 400 for the first blood. Only going to accelerate something like an Abyssal Mask. I wonder if we'll see Banner of Command. Normally we see mid lane Sion build it, but Cho'Gath just feasts the bannered minions, so when it comes to lane pressure, which is the backup thing for an early banner of command, you don't get that against Cho'Gath, so maybe you build a 4th or 5th item, but a 1st or 2nd item, because there's no value in the laning phase really at all, we probably won't see it.
Yeah, you mentioned the jungle matchup earlier on, and so far it looks like Haru is having a much better time. He did a bit of counter jungling towards the side of Blank in the Raptor camp and other areas, and so far about, I think, 4 camps behind here is Blank overall. So props to Haru for doing what Ambition couldn't in game 1.
Largely been about farming for Haru, who has been punishing the early Zac gank in the top lane with those extra camps. Ocean Drake, 3-8 minutes would be lovely for KSV. FLICKR trying to interrupt it. Haru's low, pretty low on this.
Yeah, he's going to eat up the plants here and just trying to release. Gets stun onto FLICKR. It's going to cancel the ultimate for now. They might just back off from there, but let's see. Just one more spear going to be put in, and the smite from Haru does mean the Ocean Drake goes over to KSV.
Much more mid and bot lane priority than they had in game number 1, and a nice early start by Haru. Good to see from KSV. For the players that weren't available to them after Blank's smart pathing in game 1, and Ambition's passivity came together and coalesced into this almost pure map control for SKT in game 1. Still has been a pushing lane for SKT for the majority of the laning phase, as Stana and Alistair don't have enough vision forward of the river to be able to use the Alistair CC aggressively. But so far, so good for KSV. Definitely looking much more competitive in game number 2.
It's always a fun thing you can do as Anivia, is walk over to the Raptors. You clear them so fast, and as long as the mid laner is not there to punish you, you can certainly be quite annoying with that, as we saw FLICKR doing.
Guys are wondering about QV still going 4 points into the Roar of the Slayer rather than maxing the Q. So many interrupts for the Cho'Gath. Q and W both interrupting the charge of the Decimating Smash means it doesn't really make sense. Put extra levels into that ability early. Ruler really wants to back and get an AD item because he went for Ninja Tabi first. So easy to be chunked out by a Deadly Plumage trade if both the Xayah and Rakan are autoing you. That Boots 2 against Xayah Rakan is becoming more and more common, and also the extra flat movement speed lets you sidestep the Grand Entrance a lot easier.
We saw Crown peeking around in the red side jungle. I was thinking maybe he could go for a roam. There was no ward there, but control ward in the river did spot him. So SKT were very aware of that roam.
Inching forward a KSV. They actually control the bot side river that SKT control for almost the entirety of game number 1. QV predictably after the early kill is having a whale of a time on the top side. Haven't been able to get a roam, as getting in and gap closing on the Anivia would be fantastic from the side of KSV. But so far, no ability to do that. There's no cleanse on FLICKR for now, has the teleport. So definitely a Wombo CC engage would at least get the egg out of the Anivia.
Well, always a cool sound effect, but nothing is happening. He's just going up to the top lane. No ganks coming in, and you notice that FLICKR and Blank are not willing to take that trade for a long time. They want their Anivia to scale up, get a couple of items. You're not necessarily an early game fighter unless it's solo queue and you're smurfing or something. Generally, you just try to sit here, use your ultimate to clear waves, and you just try not to die. And so far, he's been pretty good at that. He still has his egg, still hanging around. No gank has been successful, even with all the controlled vision around the mid side for KSV.
I think that's kind of forgotten about with Anivia is there is a few matchups, very, very old classic matchups where she can take the role of lane aggressor. If it was mid lane Sion, obviously she'd be walking up and trying to punish with ultimate into E trades, trying to get the big damage from the Frostbite. But basically, if you ever outrange Anivia, you have a lot of options. The Ryze matchup is another one where she takes the role of the aggressor. This matchup, the Syndra counter pick, definitely outranges her. So she struggles to have that role. But again, because we don't see Anivia a lot, you lose track of those handful of matchups with champions that on paper seem very oppressive, but actually Anivia's extra range gives her a lot of good options against.
League of Archangel's staff, as even the Syndra gets it. And on this patch, we'll see if that gets changed in the future. Of course, FLICKR goes for Rod of Ages first, then we'll go into that item. Trying to pick up the blue, as you'll notice that KSV getting pretty aggressive in here.
Very nice leash spot. If Blank stays there, you'll notice it wasn't losing any patience, so no chance it was going to be stolen. Interrupt.
Blank a little bit too far forward here as he tries to challenge them, and even CoreJJ roaming up from the bottom lane. FLICKR in a lot of trouble too. He's going to be forced to flash here. Does just barely get out in time, so a bit of a mistake from Blank and a nice roam from CoreJJ.
He seemed very confident that he could disengage with Elastic Slingshot. Wasn't able to. They roamed up with the Alistair, so SKT have inside track on the bot lane turret. Ruler was trying to stay there for just experience. Now going to be pushed out of lane eventually, although the roam's coming from CoreJJ and Crown.
Looks like they should get back in time. Nice response from the SKT bottom lane. If they could pick up that bottom tier 1 for First Blood turret, then certainly, even though it looked bad on the side of SKT, that would be a nice objective gain and a win for SKT.
Seeing Effort and Bang walk up. Couple of autos on this turret. It will go down.
One more. There it is. So they're going to split the gold. Needed to have Effort stay in. They're actually going to engage here onto CoreJJ. Forced to pop that ultimate. The consistent damage comes out, but enough damage reduction means that no kills happen.
Do end the laning phase as Tristana won't be online until a couple of items are complete. That's big for SKT after the invade has meant that mid-jungle and mid-priority is on the side of KSV this game. Cemented by the Rift Herald being picked up by KSV about 14 minutes. Performance so far in this game does remind me of spring season Samsung Galaxy last year, and that was when Haru and Crown were monopolizing the jungle mid lane rather than Ambition, who didn't really play a lot in spring. And see the replay of this invade. This is all about mid lane priority. Anivia being counterpicked means she has to be on the defensive side. They walk up and Blank chooses to go for a QE out rather than just flashing or trying to disengage in a different way. There were many safer ways for him to try to get out there. I believe Ultimate was available too, although can't confirm that as we see picture-in-picture.
Yeah, nice wall here to try to get the disengage, but FLICKR has no flash and nowhere to go. He's going to have to sacrifice himself just for the Ocean Drake. Everybody else, or rather the Cloud Drake even, everybody else is going to get out there. FLICKR knew he was surrounded with no escape.
It seems like that was on a recall. They wanted to get a Drake, stop the stacking from KSV. They lose the mid lane turret. It certainly wasn't worth it, Valdez. But just to finish my point, when KSV looked really strong in spring season, it was Haru and Crown. And Haru was the one who unlocked Crown to be a lot more aggressive in his roams. Ever since Ambition came in the starting lineup, that has been the downfall of Crown. We haven't necessarily seen that synergy return in so far in the 2018 spring season. But if you do follow history, that's where Crown looked at as most potent, and it was nice to see the mid lane priority capitalize on with that blue buff steal away.
So looking a lot better here on the red side is KSV. Game isn't over, but certainly getting the mid lane turret is going to be quite fantastic for the side of KSV. Cloud Drake, as you mentioned, we got to wait until the next patches so we can get that in-combat movement speed. Would be fantastic for especially Rakan and Cho'Gath, who wants to get into that back line. We'll see if Tal, after a pretty weak laning phase, if maybe later on in the game he can go for some nice teleports. Certainly not what he's known for, but will be very important up against Tristana and the Syndra specifically.
Haru, as we mentioned in the early game, spent a lot of time farming. When Zach went top lane, he stole away camps. He was caught in the enemy jungle once. Very much been a counter-jungling game so far from Haru. You can see on the heat map we had there, plenty of visits into the enemy jungle. Now watching SKT trying to split the map a little bit as KSV want to get their second tower of the game on the bot side.
Yeah, looks like a lot more damage up on the top side comparatively to the bottom side, but already they have Haru down here, and Tal is just a little bit late, so of course can't stand under that turret, would just die. Looking to dive onto Cuvee now, who is all alone. We do have Crown coming in from the jungle, but it looks like it will not be in time as Cuvee just staying a little bit too late underneath that turret.
It's really strange. Cuvee had no control of his own red side jungle and decides to stay when we saw Tal on the other side of the map, just giving it up. I'd have thought he could ult out, but ends up wasting his ult just as he dies. KSV, because he bought some time, looking to trade up and look to get a 2-for-1 turret trade. Seems like it's going to be very possible here as Tal's being super respectful. Could argue that it's worth it to give up 1 kill for an extra turret.
In the end, I mean, FLICKR also came to the mid lane and tried to push this one in. Wasn't very successful as Crown got there on time. Their stun comes in and FLICKR's out of mana, so they will just disengage afterwards. Kind of an interesting place in this game now after the 2 bottom turrets and the mid lane tier 1 are taken away from SKT.
As the game goes on, it'll be very interesting to inspect KSV's damage because Crown's role in the mid to late game is pretty difficult. Doing damage to Cho'Gath and the Zac. Basically impossible for a Syndra, a Burst Mage. Getting access to the Xayah and the Anivia, also tricky. If you're really on point and you can interrupt the Rakan engage with a Scout of the Week, then perhaps Rakan is the person you're focusing on. But it's going to be definitely about Ruler this game, who has been able to pile on the farm and match the Xayah. So that's good news for the side of KSV.
FLICKR and CoreJJ, both of them trying to be tricky. Got a similar situation here as they knew he was in the brush, but after all they can get is just the control ward.
KSV do have is incredible pick. They put down 3 control wards, 4 control wards around the Baron. It hits 20 minutes. You have to face check. There is certainly burst if 5 members are hitting 1, and that is what KSV are going to be strongest at. Trying to get the very early control here, but no Syndra means they do back away.
Yeah. Crown doing his split pushing thing. He switched to Ghost now after the heal. No teleport or anything like that onto our Syndra. And so we'll just be up there all on his lonesome. We'll see what he can do as he might be in a little bit of trouble as Blank is going behind him here. But KSV, nice response, trying to get onto Blank, who wants to get away but runs straight into CoreJJ, who at the end of it all does not want to engage. Nice wall too from FLICKR to say nope. No coming through here.
They have a lot of note buttons. They have the Crystallize. Blank can ult out. No real threat there, even though CoreJJ was closing in on his target. Watching KSV continue to push up vision. Like we said, Baron around 20 minutes is where their comp will be strongest. Looking for a face check. It's getting the out lane, the top lane outer turret would be another step towards the river control top side that KSV are currently focusing on.
It's a nice play, too, to bring up QV even without the TP because it was such a long lane in the bottom side. It took forever for Tal to push up to the turret he's up to now, and of course the Sion will always be able to get back in the lane on time. So just bring him in, creating that pressure, gets another objective, and at least SKT can get the Rift Scuttler. That will certainly help out with the vision, but other than that, looking KSV favored in terms of the vision around there.
KSV's mid laner Crown has actually shown us that he has a very specific read on the itemization on patch 8.4. He will almost without fail go Archangel Staff into Death Cap on basically every champion that starts Archangel. Saw him do it on the AP Kog'Maw, on the Karma, now on the Syndra. He doesn't seem to like to opt into items like the Liandry's in particular. That was a very big ticket item at the start of 8.4, and now a lot of mid laners are moving away with it. Understand that a lot of that 10% damage app never gets activated because 5 seconds of combat is a long time. A lot of fights are decided before then.
Here we go again from Crown. Alone pushing a side lane, but this time it might actually beat SKT in. Blank not in a great spot here. Is going to have that passive, but here comes Tal. Going to chomp down and take away that Syndra. Can they save him though? He's so tanky, and there's no damage. Look at Ruler totally zoned out the entire time in this fight. And now Cubate's going to go down. CoreJJ all by his lonesome on the right side with the exhaust coming in here, trying to survive, but not looking good. The Grand Entrance going to take him down. Double kill over to Bang. Kind of a wonky, messy fight that SKT get the better of.
Yeah, great TP coming in from Tal was the reason that could actually happen. You noted it during the fight. There were no auto attacks from Ruler, no value from the 2-item Tristana because her entire front line was trying to bail out the mid laner. If you watch the replay at the start, you might think, okay, Crown doesn't die. The cavalry are coming. This is going to be a one-team fight for KSV. But everyone on KSV uses their CC and commits to the fight before Ruler even manages to get auto attacks off. He gets 1 auto, 2 auto on a Bloblet, 3 autos, and then has to back away because SKT are in formation, with FLICKR being able to damage and peel for Bang, and Ruler is out of position. All the defensive ults and CC were used to try to kill the Zac and to peel for the Syndra. Nothing was left for Ruler, who leaves that fight with everything up, but no damage done.
It was just hilarious to watch them try to do damage onto Zac and Cho'Gath when they lost their Syndra. It's just like non-existent damage. We all mentioned Ruler was not in position. They try to rush down the Baron, but SKT read it. KSV not going to take any chances here.
What KSV need to understand from that mistake is play around Ruler. From this point onwards, they need to play around their consistent damage. That is only Ruler.
Oh boy. Well, that was kind of funny.
We've definitely had some Sejuani lowlights, given that we have Sejuani every game in the LCK.
I didn't really know what else to say. That's basically all I got. And yeah, not the best ultimate we've seen from Haru, who has been having a good game, sitting at 2-0-1, but certainly not one of his highlights. Effort with the jukes, I suppose we can say, in a more positive light.
He had to go for the blind play because they have had a control ward sticking in the area the entire time. Ended up looking silly, like you mentioned. Going for this death cap build, you know, fairly expensive build, means the Void Staff is still going to be pretty much an 1,800 gold investment or more, about 2,100 gold investment away. So waiting for Syndra to have really any threat onto Zac and Cho'Gath in the front line.
Duvantal just in position. You mentioned the TP was part of the reason in that last fight why Crown eventually did go down, but a lot of note-taking should have happened after that fight. You mentioned it, the positioning around Ruler, but also just make sure we don't get flanked by any wards. And currently, there aren't any really good wards behind the team of KSV for Tal to get in, so he's just got to go front to back. Nice knock up there as Crown in a lot of trouble, but does get a really nice stun to disengage afterwards.
This comp is really frustrating for KSV to play around because we know what comps like this want to do. They want to put vision deep, try the Baron, and turn from Baron with CC. You make the wrong face check, the wall can come in, the damage comes in.
He just walked straight into Anivia in the jungle. You cannot do that.
That's the problem. If Anivia is off the map, putting down deep vision is almost impossible because you just put down the wall behind and you either get a kill or you get a flash. There's really nothing else you can do. The Scion's flash is now down. The vision continues to be shallow. So plays like we saw from Haru where you jump over the wall and have to go for a blind ult are almost required because getting that extra deep vision against specifically Anivia of any mid laner is just a complete disaster trying to do.
These charts are, I hope they're accurate because it looks kind of funny. I suppose FLICKR hasn't really been doing too much damage. Looks like they were changing towards the end. Not so sure about the if those were real graphs or not, but Scion certainly doing a lot of damage if that is the case.
Bang sticking with the double Zeal item build rather than Infinity Edge as a third item. Doesn't have the Ardent Sensor this time, only the Zeke's Convergence, but is liking the extra fluidity having the extra attack speed brings.
Looking for Ruler here, but he always has that rocket jump to get away. Nice knock up here on a blank. That's going to be a good chunk. They're even going to use the Sejuani ultimate, but good engage once again. Blank is going to go down, though, on the end of it. And now CoreJJ getting onto Tal, who's getting pretty low. FLICKR still in good position here, going to move forward, try to get that E down, and it's going to take down, and he does pick up the kill. So nice little play there from FLICKR on the Anivia. Always in position. Huge damage now, though, coming out from the Syndra SKT. They got to be careful. They're playing with fire. Effort again going to jump in, has to flash away. Ruler again with the rocket jump, gets out of dodge. Crown now getting a lot more confident, gets the stun onto FLICKR. Seems like the fight never ends, but SKT on the end of it are going to lose.
I spent the whole fight watching Ruler and the frustration he had to deal with. The kill happened without his involvement, and then after that, rupture into silent, no ability to rocket jump in because there was never any safety. Still getting no value out of Tristana at her strongest point. 3 items is when she has that early spike. while she gets stronger and stronger with levels and items, you pick Tristana for this moment onwards. So Ruler, once again, they haven't really found a way to comp around the Tristana. They get the minimum. It's a small lead to KSV. Definitely not breaking open the game like they set up for.
Look at that banner push in the bottom lane actually coming out here. You can see how much damage it did to that bottom tier 2. Generally not the easiest turret to take out, but a good start on just the one banner from the Cho'Gath, looks like. Bottom side. Kive sets up his own, so of course Tal gonna have to respond to that down there.
Tal has a better time with the Feast than the Scion does. Sion's really good at repelling the Bannon minion because he can roar it away and delay some of the threat, but when it comes to actually killing the minion, Sion struggles. They're still trying to kill Blank again.
Yeah, I mean, they have so much CC, as you mentioned, and looks like a queued up Let's Bounce for Blank. Gets him to safety, but KSV were already disengaging.
Seeing pings from Crown in the top lane. Both Crown and FLICKR traditionally have been these mid laners to play in the side lane on non-side lane champions like the Cassiopeia and the Syndra and try to hit item spikes before fights. They definitely look for delay from their teammates before they want to group. FLICKR in this particular game has been grouping a lot more as Anivia has that extra utility compared to the Syndra. It seems like Crown is a couple of 100 gold away and maybe just a shop away from the Void Staff, and that's when the front line, at least for now, before there's 4 or 5 tank items, have to respect the Syndra burst.
Certainly, already the Syndra is scary, but about to get even scarier. They want to engage. Here comes Tal once again, but just one combo, Q-stun from the Syndra is going to get on top of Bang and do a lot of damage, so he's got to lifesteal that back up.
Still waiting for that first front-to-back team fight with the Tristana. KSV. Again, difficult to set those up because whatever you have in your mind, the Crystallize can really change the battlefield very quickly. They got the stun.
FLICKR's on a ward, and he's going to try to flash away from this one, but not looking good. But a good follow-up engage from Blank and a fantastic wall, and there it is. The follow-up from that first. They're going to get 2 as a massive wall comes in from FLICKR. The godlike plays to turn that fight around.
You can see that KSV are not ready and practiced at playing against Anivia. It looked like the easiest pick of all time. FLICKR caught in the shop for the multiple times this season, but the wall turns it around. Again, KSV can do no damage with that Tristana, and SKT looking for Baron.
The wall is going to be very nice, but lots of low members here on the side of SKT. They got to get off of this one and disengage. Cube's just running on in. The Feast, they want to get that Baron, but it's stunned. He does get it at the last second. That was like 150 health left over. Nice wall once again here from FLICKR. Doesn't look like KSV want to fight this one. It's just way too much CC. And not enough poke coming out of KSV to get anyone down, so the Baron does go over to SKT.
Yeah, with Haru dying and having the Feast to secure, Cho'Gath is able to get the Baron eventually. Watch the replay. He's backing on a ward. Again, we've seen this from FLICKR time and time again, a bad habit. He ends up getting ulted. Only realizes it after the CC hits, but then watch the Crystallize.
Look at Serfs, too.
And you see, where's the damage? Ruler and Crown, they can't do anything apart from autoing effort a few times. So 2 people die instantly after being split by the wall. Power of Anivia in a choke. She's not quite Rumble, but the chokes are still super hazardous when you're fighting against Anivia. Baron, a big one, given that KSV really did own a lot of the vision control in game number 2. And SKT ahead for the first time this game.
You mentioned you got to be ready, and you have to put thought into how you're going to fight against the Anivia. Anivia is one of the best champions for climbing in silver and gold because you just take Ignite, and people don't know what to do. They walk through your ultimate. And KSV is not doing that level, but they're having a bunch of times over and over again where it's like, we can fight here, we should be fine, we can burst her down. And even if they did get that, I think they underestimated the response time from SKT, who were there to support FLICKR, who would have had his egg, even if he did get taken out. So kind of an interesting play overall. And now SKT having their way with the mid lane.
Bannon minion, no threat from KSV. Can't even roar it away because they're taking chunk damage from the AD carry.
Yeah. We can call this one Wolf as a tribute to the guy who's not playing today.
That's fair. One single tier.
Yeah. Wolf.
Oh no!
No,
Wolf
see you
got
later.
kidnapped.
KSV want to bring him onto their team. And SKT says, okay, you can have him.
So, as far as we can tell, Wolf wasn't the problem. So we're going to maybe find out through the course of the bannons who the problem was.
Yeah. Well, look at this wave in the bottom side.
Here's the second one. We're going to call this one Pyrian.
Yep, there he is. And he's got a bunch of friends, too. Look at how massive that wave is. That is unbelievable. That's not just a bannon. That's just way too much. JJ trying to engage on the left side, but there's no way to get onto that bannon. It's way too far away. Pyrian having a fun time in the bottom side.
We haven't seen him for SKT until now. Flawless so far. They break the inhibitor.
Oh, Crown. Gotta be careful about that one. We mentioned it before. Syndra doesn't really have an escape outside of her flash.
I'm going to put it out there. Pyrian did his job as well.
Oh, poor JJ. We'll see you later. Certainly doing his job for SKT this time around.
The damage in the fountain.
Really good engage once again. And KSV now somehow, after losing the Baron, tails between their legs, they have no answer as Ruler is stunned for what seems like ages. Has to go back into the fountain. This push never seems to end. They're getting in there. Crown is getting low. He cannot clear the wave, and Anivia is having so much fun, just zoning everybody out with the walls, with the ultimate. Let's see if they continue going in. The Flash Beast doesn't do quite enough damage to Crown. It looks like they want to disengage from here.
Game may not end, but they get everything bar the second Nexus turret on a single Baron buff push. Now that's the Baron buff power play you tell your friends about. SKT back out, 6,000 gold ahead, basically from one Baron play. The Anivia, just as a pick, is completely undoing KSV. Their team fight calls and synergy are being undone. And you consider what KSV have. 3 tanks, a target acquisition mage in the Syndra, and a consistent damage dealer. Ruler hasn't been involved in any of the fights. The tanks feel like they can walk in and try to gap close against SKT, get walled off, and then they're just alone. They're just exposed with no damage behind them because FLICKR has been able to create so many different battlegrounds to just take over any of KSV's hopes.
Certainly is a fun game to watch. As a former Anivia main, I'm sure Froggen is crying tears of joy right now as he watches this game. Having so much fun. Picks up the Void Staff now. We'll see if he goes into a Death Cap as his final item afterwards. Also picked up the Leandries. Just 5 seconds and you get that 10% damage bonus. Certainly is working out in the way that FLICKR is playing the Anivia tonight. JJ is going to get caught again. Has to blow his ultimate, but we'll see if he gets out of this one. Non-stop CC, and there is just no escape. He tries to use the blasting flash. Uses a desperation flash too, as it seems like KSV are just, they don't know what's going on anymore in this game.
There was a couple of bloopers. He also used the pulverize too early before the Zac had even reached the ground, and I agree, mentality is definitely shaken on JJ at least in that particular play.
Yeah.
SKT coming down the front door. They have minions pushing in the bot lane as well.
It's really fun times when you're, if you're losing on Anivia, you can just wave clear for days. If you're winning, it is so good for zone control. It makes the knockup from the Cho'Gath really good as well. And another nice wall. Effort's gonna hop in and hop out as they gain even more time. Bang gotta be careful there, but they bait in Ruler. Can't quite get him down, and now Blank in a little bit of trouble. Has to kidnap out of there. Another defensive wall just to say, okay, white flag, we don't want to fight anymore.
Still was nice for him to use the let's bounce through the Sejuani ultimate, as he instantly realized after jumping in that Bang had already been forced out of the fight. So they recall, they back away. SKT still in a position of power. We still have not seen a single fight where Ruler has been able to do any sort of damage. The damage graph is going to look very much like an indictment of Ruler's play this game, but it's been a team-wide problem of being unable to fire the loaded gun they have. They basically have everything ready to KSV, but SKT have outplayed them in teamfight construction, and KSV have shown to be novices at dealing with how Anivia warps games. Again, somewhat understanding of the fact that you see very little Anivia in solo queue and also in professional play till very recently. But the adaptations need to come soon because we're almost at the playoffs.
Very true. It's nice to watch FLICKR having such a good game on the champion, too. You don't see him play it too much on stream, if ever. And obviously, his first game here in 2018 spring on the champion. There's the engage. They're going to get Ruler over there. Crown in the front line. He's just going to disappear. And now the back line. Look at Ruler. He cannot get close in this fight. Everybody just going to be running with their tail between their legs. Sion going to lead the charge as, again, Core JJ goes down. There's nothing they can do. Crown just getting bursted out of that fight before it even started.
And Syndra had so much of a fun time in lane against Anivia. Great lane, but out of lane, no fun at all. They're looking for the end.
Yeah, they're looking for it here. KSV, they're going to survive at least for now. But another fantastic ball. You're not getting away with this one as the kidnap comes in. And Ruler, it's going to go down eventually. They go for Cube first. Ruler just knows he cannot do anything. The inhibitor's going to respawn.
Awkward.
So they cannot end the game. It's really up to Ruler here to try to go 1v5. We'll see if he can actually do it. Very doubtful as the long death timers are coming in at 38 minutes. They kill the inhibitor, and that's going to do it for the game. Another wall just for good measure, and the 2-0 from SKT. A big surprise for sure, as they say, we want to go to the playoffs.
SKT get some payback onto KSV, take them down twice in the regular season in LCK Spring and keep their slim hopes of making it to the playoffs alive. They still need the results to go their way. Rox Tigers has the inside track and they play Kongdu Monster in our second set. But the most tantalizing thing about this game is that KSV may end up doing the double favor for them, Valdez, because KSV play against the Rox Tigers next week. And if they lose to SKT and beat Rox, which is certainly possible with how good KSV have been outside of this game, SKT have a real shot of making it to playoffs.
That they do. This was the win they needed. Bang could hardly believe it. He had his hand over his mouth like, oh my God, did I do that? As certainly was a very dominant game there from SKT. As Koma looks really happy. It's nice to see him run into the booth and especially go over to Tal and say, wow, you guys had a really good game. Something he had so much trouble with, his teleports. He got a fantastic one, which really got the ball rolling, and he did a good job of zoning out Ruler and making him just insignificant in this game. KSV, they're not devastated. They know they still have a good chance of making it into playoffs, but certainly not a feel-good moment for their team.
I mean, KSV probably approached this game thinking we could beat the SKT we saw against BBQ, but the SKT we see today has new strategies, is playing different stuff. They change up the lineup very slightly with effort coming in, but it unlocks some different strategies, and they put them into practice in a way that KSV seemed behind the 8-ball on. They did not seem to be ready for what SKT brought today. Here's the replay, and we know that Syndra is that artillery, but very, very stationary artillery, knocked up, basically instantly killed in this particular fight. And from there, it was going to be Baron, it was going to be game ender. KSV, nothing Ruler could do. He got more orders this time, but his tank line was running away from him, and that lets you know that it's a lost team fight for the Tristana.
I mean, we got a shout out to effort as well. You mentioned him coming in, and his channel play was excellent in game one, just the little things looking good, and he had a couple of engages in terms of acquiring the right targets and punishing them for just the tiny little positioning mistake of Crown in the mid lane and just ending that game for them. And here we go. Once again, huge damage from the side of Bang, who seems to really like that Xayah with or without the Rakan.
While Anivia may have only done 20,000 damage, there was a way to represent the extra damage her teammates could do because of the wall placement. She'd be off the charts. It was a fantastic performance by FLICKR on the Anivia that, as we mentioned, was previously just a pseudo Vlad counter that he brought out a couple of years ago. Ended up being a blind pick in this game after the Sion was fetched to the top lane. The lane just fine against the Syndra and overtook the game in team fights in the mid to late. So a virtuoso performance by Anivia in this game. A great series by SKT. They still do not control their fate after the loss to BBQ. But this was the one game in their run-up that looked the least likely for them to pick up a victory, and they win it 2-0, so their game score is even buffed up as well.
They bring in effort, and I mentioned FLICKR kind of channeling his inner devil, looking into his own eyes. in the makeup room and just focusing, this level of focus that I've rarely seen from pro players. And, well, he had a fantastic series, one of the best we've seen. On the Azir, he was making godlike plays over and over, and then he picks out the Anivia, which we rarely see from him, and plays it like a god. So shout out to him for being FLICKR. And let's see who the MVP is going to be. It is going to be Effort. As I mentioned before, great initiation over and over. Good job from him.
0-0-1-2 scoreline is exactly what SKT wanted to see. He played the basics very, very well. I like the Janna thought in game one. It was well piloted by Effort. His first MVP of the season as well. So Blank and Effort both having good series for SKT in the same match is a really important thing for SKT. Do we finally have their final form? Will this be the five-man roster they play going forward? We still don't know because they have been so quick to change with winning and losing formulas. It seems like Blossom is not in, and as long as Blank is getting the Zac and whether he can turn that Zac form into great form on other champions, good news stories abound for SKT.
So guys, I'm going to hand it over to Ji-sun. We're going to jump into the translation with these two guys and their first MVPs right now.
정말 절실한 상황에서 이렇게 값진 승리를 거둔 SK텔레콤 T1. 오늘의 MVP는 정말 침체되어 있던 SK텔레콤 T1을 수렁에서 건져낸 진짜 MVP가 아닐까라는 생각을 해봅니다. 이 두 선수를 직접 만나보시죠.
그렇습니다. 김소연 아나운서의 마이크를 파괴시킬 정도의 놀라운 경기력이 나왔습니다. 2대5 승리를 따냈던 SK텔레콤 두 명의 MVP를 여러분 박수 함께 나오겠습니다. 이 두 명의 선수 사실 어떻게 보면 MVP로 따지면은 두 선수도 오늘 첫 번씩 받은 거니까 감흥이 남다를 것 같은데 먼저 승리 소감 좀 부탁드릴까요?
일단 오늘 경기가 중요했는데 일단 이기게 돼서
네.
제가 사실
feel happy that we won the game today.
경기를 완전히 승리한 적이 없어서
And you know, I haven't made clear scores in the series, so I was having a hard time. So really happy today that we won.
선수 오늘 약간의 그 마음 벌수 있을 상황이 된 것 같은데. 에포트 선수도 굉장히 집중하네요.
Therefore, you look really calm. How do you feel?
오랜만에 나와서 좀
Well, it has been a while since I played for the competitive game, so there was a little bit of pressure, but I'm really happy that we won the series.
블랙 선수가 잠깐 얘기했는데 페이커 선수와 초창기 때의 느낌하고 좀 비슷하다라는.
And people said that there were great. Oh, you look alike FLICKR when he was younger.
걸을 수도 있을 것 같은 에포트 선수인데 어떻습니까? 오늘 경기력이 그래서 잘 나온 것
So,
같아요.
are you satisfied with your play today?
닮았다는 생각은 안 해봤거든요.
안 그래요?
Well, I don't really think that I look alike him.
뭐 그런 게 있을 수도 있겠죠. 잘.
그럼 본인은 누구 닮았다고 생각해요?
Well, who do you think that you look alike? Well, I'm just me.
부모님 닮고?
Not my parents.
그럼 또 블랭크 선수도 좀 얘기를 나눠보겠습니다. 사실 블랭크 선수가 역시 자크 스킨의
Blank, your performance on Zac was amazing.
부담스러운 장면들이 최근에 좀 많았잖아요. 사실
And you did have some hard times coming through the splits.
팬들도 굉장히 많이 안타까워했었거든요.
And a lot of fans were worried about you. So, how was today's match?
그런 전의 경기들 다 떨쳐내고 그냥
Well, I just tried to move on from our past losses
네.
and try to make sure that win all the upcoming schedules.
또 연습을 정말 열심히 해가지고
So I really practiced a lot. And I think it's a really relieving that it showed off in the series as a result.
굉장히 여러 가지는 좀 보여주고 있다는 얘기 좀 들었었는데 그 연습 결과가 오늘 좀 나온 것 같아요.
So did you think you brought your performance from your practices?
예전이랑 달라.
Yeah, not like the back in the days. I think nowadays I think I'm doing as well as I do in the practices.
과감한 공격성 자체가 굉장히 남달랐다는 얘기가 있었습니다. 좀
Well, there were stunning plays from you on Zac, very aggressive.
그 태도부터 좀 다른 느낌이 있었는데 오늘
It feels like you have changed your playstyle a little bit.
라인 주도권이 있었기 때문에 그런 플레이가
Well, it was thanks to our laners. They had so many priority in the laning phase.
나와야 그게 보여지는 거거든요. 그래서 네, 각이 나오는 대로 그냥 본 것 같아요.
And as soon as I saw the angle coming, I just went right in.
화면을 통해 봐야 될 것 같은데.
정답이에요.
Well, and let's check out the clip for the highlights.
요거였거든요. 처음 나왔었던 거.
So this was the first highlight.
네, 각이 좋아서 네.
Yeah, I did see the angle coming here, and I knew that we're gonna win, so I just went right in.
이 장면 다음인데 여기서 추격하는 것도 굉장히 좋았거든요.
네, 일단 카르마가 높은
And here, I knew that she didn't have flash. And we had good follow-up, so it was lucky for us to make the kill over there.
장면까지 연결이 상당히 좋았던 이 모습이었는데 1세트 에포트는 어땠어요?
Then how was the first set,
경기가
F4?
그냥 시원하게 풀렸잖아요. 그러다 보니까 막 스코어도 엄청나게 좀 차이 나는 장면들도 있었고.
It was really dominant
1세트 본인은
game for
어떤
SK
식으로
Telecom.
풀렸던 것 같아요?
그 원래 잔나를 뽑으면 라인전을 좀 리드하는 모습이 나와야 되는데
Well,
제가
I think
원거리 좀 많이 못
you need
들어가지고
some
조합상으로 좀
like
그런 거였거든요.
winning the laning phase if you pick Jenna, but I failed to show the performance. But thanks to our mid laner and jungler, it was easier for us to play in the bot lane.
보면은 약간 다른 느낌이 있었죠. 1세트는 사실상 뭐 지금 뭐 블랙 선수가 얘기했던 것처럼
So the first
전반적으로
game,
라인들이 잘 풀려서 경기가 갔다면
as you say, the first game was a little bit dominant, but the second game, I think it was really great performance from the bot laners. How was the second game?
또 제가 만든 것도 물론 있지만 그 자크도 그렇고
Well, yeah, we did play well, but Zac and Nivea really made the whole game, so it was comfortable for us to play in the bot lane.
그럼 애니비아 얘기가 또 나와서 그런데 팬 여러분들께서
speaking of
그런 거 많이
Nivea,
궁금해하세요. 팀 내 애니비아가 중간에 있으면 이게 어떤 느낌이 드는지에 대한
And how do you guys rate Nivea as a mid lane champion for competitive games?
다른 판을 짜야 되나? 뭐 여러 가지 궁금증들이 있더라고요.
How do you guys feel about using Nivea in the mid lane? I think it's a great pick for the mid and late games. So we were just trying to go to the mid and late games. And I think we're happy that we could go as we prepare in the beforehand.
좋았어요. 좋았다는 거예요.
Yeah, I think you guys did a great job.
선수 2세트는 본인이
Then F4.
했던 장면 중에 제가 막
Is there any highlight you want to pick from the game too?
가장 마음에 드는 장면이 있다면 내 마음속에 담아두고 싶은 장면이 있다면 뭐가 있을까요?
그 마지막에 신드라 잡은 거 그거 하나
Well,
진짜 잘한 것 같거든요.
well, I caught out Syndra in the last moment, so I think that was the highlight.
두 개예요.
Well, we prepared to.
마고 나서 에포트가 오는 순간 여기서 제대로 상대편을 띄우는 장면이 있었거든요.
이거도 근데
Yeah, it was a really great comeback from you guys. Well, it was actually FLICKR's really super play for surviving over there, so we can make a comeback.
어떤 골들이 있었나요?
근데 그 준식이 형이 그냥
Well, at this moment,
거리 나오면은 그냥 보면은 바로 죽일 수 있다 해서
I said, Bang just told me to just go in if I see the angle coming, so I just did as he told me, and I think it came up with a great result.
했다고 이렇게 막 그 후배를 좀 챙겨주는 이런 마음이 좋은데 지금 최근에 SKT 같은 경우는 그 신예 선수들의 모습들이 자주 보이잖아요. 물론
So SKT is trying to bring up some new players in team, especially they are rookies.
블랭크가 끼기에 요즘에 뭐 에포트라든지
So F4 or Blossom or Tuhal.
어때요?
So how do you feel about that?
네.
저도 어리지만
Well, I'm young, but I have to say, like having those young and new friends in our team is really good.
좀더 패기스러운 모습
They're more aggressive, so yeah, I think it's good for our team.
예를 들어서 말씀해 주실 수 있을까요, 혹시?
Any examples?
패기가 다른데 두 살 동생의 패기가 달라 이런 느낌 있다면.
검산이 같은 블라썸
For example, Blossom,
엄청 과감하게 들어.
he's really aggressive in games.
그것도 많이 배울 점이라서
So I think I have to learn from him for those kind of play style.
에포트 선수도
And also F4,
신예답지 않은
unlike Rookie,
뭐라 할까 중압감.
he has that some kind of force as a player.
중앙감을 상대편한테 줄 수 있으니까. 네. 그런 것도
완전의
있고.
매력이 있습니다.
그리고 또 다른 뭐 신예 선수들 많이 있잖아요. 근데 동생들
Any other players that you want to mention?
가장 마음에 맞는 분이 있어요, 혹시?
신예 중에요.
네, 네. 에포트.
상호가 아무래도
Well, I think F4 is my favorite
바뀌는 동생이라
rookie in our team.
에포트 선수는 가장 마음에 맞는 선배가 있다면 누가 있을까요?
What about you, F4?
블레이크 선수.
I think Blank is my favorite player of our team.
MVP를 따냈던 것 같은데 오늘 이 두 명의 선수가 멋진 경기를 펼치면서 SKT가 여전히 가능성이
So
있다는
SKT,
것을
you guys
팬들과
still have
다른
opportunity
선수들과
to make it
SK
into
다른
playoffs.
선수들에게 했습니다. 오늘 그래서
So
많은
would you like to
분들께서
say
큰
anything
박수와
for your
함께,
fans?
두 선수를 또 축하해주고 계신데 많은 팬 여러분께 끝으로 한 말씀씩 먼저 후배인 우리 에포트 선수부터 한번
The
부탁드릴까요?
F4, you first.
나와서 이기게 됐는데 이제 다음부터도 계속 나와서
I'm gonna make sure that I can make in games and show great performance and
기쁜 거 맞죠?
win our upcoming matches.
하나 웃으면서
감사합니다.
Thank
네,
you.
고맙습니다. 네. 이어서 블랙 선수도
일단 처음 목표가 지금 목표가
Our primary goal is making into the postseason, so we're focusing around it, but I also want to make it to the MS side, so we're gonna try really hard. So it was a very dominant game from SK Telecom, and this will be the end of the first interview of today, and I'll pass it back to our casters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji-sun, for the translation. We are going to go ahead and look at some highlights from game number 2. Started off good for KSV. They were winning the side lanes, the solo lane, and then they ran into a ice wall, and things began to look a lot worse, as we'll eventually see here.
Yeah, this was the fight where Crown was caught napping a little bit, and it looked like they would be able to rotate more members to actually take out the Syndra. But from there, Syndra herself feasted and no damage from Ruler, and it happened again and again, Valdez. Getting value out of the Tristana was something that KSV were unable to do, and the Anivia walls again and again wrecked the tank line that KSV was trying to fight with. Just really clean stuff from SKT, and inventive as well. Controlled aggression is the word I would use to describe SKT today. You remember back to the Blossom comps where they would all be flashing in. Everyone's an initiator. This is the most aggressive we've seen from SKT since 2013. This was not that. This was controlled aggression. This was very much the SKT playstyle in parentheses that people know and remember. And for them to bring that back 8 weeks into the season, is it too late for them to make playoffs? Maybe. But is it too late for them to at least tell their fans that there is a 5-man roster that on this day could pretty handedly outplay KSV? No. So SKT fans will be happy to see this level of performance from their players.
Yeah, they look quite good. I hope that they can continue this level of play, and we'll see in the future here. As certainly Effort getting his first MVP win, should be happy about his play and maybe even play more confidently in the future. And yeah, the chances of making it into playoffs are better after today's win. That's what it says. And a quick 2-0 over KSV to repeat that performance that they did in the first round is quite nice. Some quick games too, 36 and 38 minutes, not too long.
But the meme start. Can SKT make playoffs? The new Can SKT still make Worlds meme? And the answer is yes, but, because still they are in with a chance, and KSV can do them a big favor when they play Rocks Tigers next week. We go on to the standings. SKT for now in 6th spot. Notice they are the same game score as Rocks, and they have one good news story. They actually have the head-to-head over Rocks if the game score and match score is identical at the end of the season. The Rocks have a match in hand today against Kongnu Monster, who have not won in many, many series. So if Rocks Tigers win, they will continue to be one series in front, and they will need to get a bit of a helping hand from KSV, honestly. KSV beating Rocks Tigers next week is the best way to guarantee that SK Telecom makes it back into the top 5.
It's going to be an interesting game, though, because KSV tonight, you're like, what happened? You look good in the last series that you played up against Janair and KT, but then you go down 0-2 to SKT. Seems very inconsistent, and Rocks Tigers were the team that nearly 2-0'd Kingzone in their series, right? They were one big mistake away of just winning that series 2-0. Like this, the Lava Realm Warp into the enemy team, the two of them died in game 1 when they had just gotten the Elder Drake at 62 minutes. It was a pretty crazy game. Definitely rewatched that one. And Rocks Tigers won game 2. So Rocks Tigers are like on the upswing. They look a lot better, whereas KSV after tonight, I'm not so sure.
It's about 50 minutes, guys. We'll come back. Go watch some LPL. Enjoy yourselves. But more League of Legends in about 50 minutes.
See you guys later.
그럼 저희는 7시 50분 콩두몬스터 락스타이거즈의 경기로 다시 인사드리겠습니다.